We're a big part of the first one. Give us a little bit of a rundown of what we can expect.
Yeah, I mean, the one that I was involved in involved the Trayvon Martin situation from 2012 and the Miami Heat and the decision to take the picture with the hoodies, which was really, when you look at what the state of affairs is right now in sports, that one was kind of sort of, I guess, ahead of its time would be a term that we could use in terms of, a public statement toward the larger discourse from what was at that time the single biggest thing in American public sports, American professional sports. So I think really with the 5 years that's passed since then, it's really interesting to look at where athletes stand and the role that they play in discussing these larger issues in life. So I think this is a really, taking the 30 for 30 brand, which is strong as it is, and then taking it into this new space. I'm looking forward to seeing how it comes out.
Yeah, we've seen obviously the NFL players with the protests they are having be out front a little more. But in your mind, is it still really the basketball players that are the most active with the social activism, or have the football players kind of equaled that?
Well, it's kind of hard. Because I think right now Kaepernick is kind of in a zone that is entirely unique himself, right, where it's kind of him and then everybody else. And then largely the guys in the NFL are, I don't want to say faceless because that's a little bit unfair, but football players, by virtue of helmets and everything else, are a bit more anonymous. Like if you ask people to name the guys in the NFL that are kneeling, for example, they could probably give you a couple names, but they couldn't do so much. Now, what happens in the NBA, at least what happened in 2012 with the Heat, was that's LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. Like they are as visible as anybody else is, and they were making that sort of statement. If you really think about it, though, with the NBA, since then, you really haven't, outside of the coaches, had people that have really stood in a way where they just truly stood out. That's not to say the guys aren't doing work necessarily, but the most public faces of the NBA on these matters right now seem to be Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich, which is kind of interesting to consider.
This 30 for 30 has interviews with LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union and Tracy Martin, who is Trayvon's father, and Bomani and many others. So looking forward to hearing that. And I'm just trying to do the math in my head. Was this before or after Donald Sterling?
This is before. Sterling is in 2014. This is in 2012.
Yeah, so that in that way it really was that felt like a watershed moment. That felt like to me like a moment where so many things changed. So this even predates that. So we're looking forward to hearing that on the 30 for 30 podcast. Bo, while we have you, let's talk a little bit about LeBron. I found that the whole thing, LeBron still has his feud with Phil Jackson. He makes no bones about it. And Frank Ntilikina, unfortunately for him, got kind of stuck in the middle of it. He became collateral damage yesterday, and Enes Kanter came to his side. What was your big-picture takeaway on all the stuff that happened last night with those two teams?
Well, I thought Frank started as collateral damage and then decided he wanted to make sure LeBron James knew that France wasn't playing, right? So he winds up getting into this thing with LeBron. And then Enes Kanter, who I'm generally fascinated by, like, guys who come to the NBA from overseas, and then you see that their functional familiarity with English comes from hanging with the NBA players. So you have this guy with a Turkish accent dropping the "you know what I'm saying" and everything after the game. Like Kanter loves getting in people's faces and talking what he has to say. He loves talking about it after the fact. And LeBron loves antagonizing the crowd at Madison Square Garden. Like the beauty of this for the NBA is it's so many individually can only happen in this league sort of things, and it's wrapped around the fact that the Knicks are halfway decent again. And the NBA is so much better when the Knicks are good. It's hard to explain, and there's a whole generation of kids that don't even know what it's like for the Knicks to be good. Trust me, it's better this way.
So, we're talking 14 games into the season here when we thought, wow, is Boston going to be that team that challenges Cleveland? They used Gordon Hayward on the first game of the season. They're now on an 80-game winning streak, and Cleveland is sitting there at 7-7. What's your early impressions, especially in the East?
In the East, I don't know what to make of anything because the Cavs are not – they're not great, certainly. To say that they're not good, I don't really I can't really go that far. But, with the Knicks, I was joking before the game where I was like, I'm not sure if the Cavs beat the Knicks. Does this mean the Knicks are good? Or does this mean the Knicks are not good? Because the Cavs only seem to be able to beat teams that are pretty good. It's been the bad teams that have been running them off the floor. So with the Celtics right now, they are absolutely right now the best regular season team in the league, but in the East. But Dan Levitard made a great point with me. He said, would you take Kyrie and the best defense in the NBA in a playoff series or LeBron and the worst defense in the NBA in a playoff series? And I'm still taking LeBron and the worst defense in the NBA.
Me too. And then we haven't even seen what they're going to look like when they're fully constituted, because when Isaiah Thomas gets there, it's going to be different. So let's all just be on record with predictions right now. When it all comes to when we get to the end and we get to June, will we all be saying, remember how cute it was when we were talking about other teams in the Eastern Conference? But clearly, this is the one, because that's where we were last June, and we had moments like that during last season. Will that be the case again?
That would be my guess in all likelihood. But I think the question we have with the Cavs is, are they going to be so desperate to max out what might be the last year of LeBron that they'll trade the pick that the Nets pick? Because if they'll trade the Nets pick, they have a great chance of, like, really fortifying this team. If they don't trade that pick, then they're just going to be betting on, we have LeBron James, how far can that take us?
And I agree. I think it'll still be Cleveland out of the East.
Me too. So all three of us are on with that. One more thing I want to get, again, Bomani Jones with us, The Right Time with Bomani Jones, and the 30 for 30 podcast is available now. On an entirely other subject, Jerry Jones versus Arthur Blank. I find this endlessly fascinating. I would love to be a fly on the wall of any of these conversations. What do you make of all of this? Jerry Jones, it seems, against the whole league, certainly lining himself up against Goodell, and now in a spat with a bunch of the other owners that could even turn into a legal issue, primarily with Arthur Blank.
Yeah, rich people are fascinating, man. Like, I mean, like that big part of this is, I feel like there are a lot of people involved in this that if they could would go step outside and fight. But that's not what rich people do. Rich people get lawyers. And so Jerry has gone to get his lawyer to be prepared for this. Everybody's on their end. Goodell's having his own issue negotiating this contract where they seem upset by all the money that he has wound up asking for. You have a bunch of owners in the league who ultimately believe that they're the ones who are in charge anyway. And this includes Jerry Jones and having that outlook and that the commissioner is simply their vessel. And this all comes together. And I think the issue for Goodell is going to be, Jerry can't block this contract. I just don't think he has enough juice to do that. But how many people have to wind up on Roger Goodell's bad side to make this job not worth it for him to do and to interfere with whatever it is that he gets out of doing this job? So I think he's going to wind up getting his money. I think he's going to wind up staying. But I have no idea what's going to make Jerry Jones give up. Right? So even if Roger gets the extension, how much is Jerry Jones going to fight everything that Roger Goodell does at that point to try to force him out? Because I don't think he's going to give up just because there's a contract extension.
And then what happens? I'm with you. I agree with everything you just said, and that's the fascinating part. Then what happens?
Right, well, there we go, because you can't, no matter what these reports are that might be, nobody can force Jerry Jones out of the league, right? Like, it's not happening unless they're going to plan to try to buy the Cowboys from him. You can't force him out, and so he's going to stick around, and he believes himself to be, what's he call himself, the ranking owner? You got to look at anybody that gives himself a title, right? He doesn't have a title. He's not on these committees. He just shows up and does it anyway. So I can imagine these other cats are resentful, where they're like, this guy says that he's the ranking owner of the league. Like, how do you decide that? And all this with the backdrop of a collective bargaining agreement that's coming up pretty soon. And the biggest thing that could hamstring what's going to happen is not beef between players and owners, but beef between owners and owners.
Yes, I agree with you completely. You're right. Ranking, what does that exactly mean? I mean, the Maras, the Rooneys, they've owned these teams for 100 years.
And he gave himself that title.
His team is just he's the wealthiest. I guess that makes him the ranking owner. I'll repeat one more time. There are some stories you have to hear to believe. It's season 2 of the acclaimed 30 for 30 podcast series. It's available now on the ESPN app and on Apple Podcasts. And the first one on the Trayvon Martin story and the reaction by the big stars of the Miami Heat. You'll hear Bomani Jones very much a part of that. Thank you, Bo. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, man. You boys have done some good work, man. Proud of you.
Thank you. Bomani Jones with us. The Right Time with Bomani every afternoon here on ESPN Radio.
At the end of the day, I don't know how many people out there care about billionaires fighting with billionaires. I know it's fascinating to us, but I have a feeling people are like, you got to be kidding me. You know, don't we have enough with the demonstrations and the union and the league and Goodell and DeMaurice Smith? Now we got to deal with these billionaires.
Can I disagree
not
slightly?
Liking one another?
Here's why I disagree slightly. I do have fatigue over the Roger Goodell and DeMaurice Smith stuff. I think a lot of fans have fatigue with that. A, this one's kind of new, right? B, this one, these are celebrities. I mean, these are famous people. We have to, I think, take out of our mind NFL owner. And Jerry Jones is a celebrity. He's a famous guy. And this is the guy who ran Tom Landry sort of indelicately out of Dallas. Mm-hmm. This is the guy who's Jerry, right? He's been there forever. And now here he is in this showdown. To Bo's point, he just described himself as the ranking owner.
The ranking owner.
What does that mean? It probably just means he's the richest, which he might be. I'm not even 100% sure of that. Actually, he's not, because Paul Allen owns the Seahawks,
right?
And Paul Allen could buy all the rest of them combined. He certainly hasn't owned his team the longest.
No.
Right? The Steelers and the Giants have been owned by those families since the inception of the league. So what exactly makes him the ranking?
I don't know, but he thinks that, and I think I see how it can tick off the other owners as well. The biggest question is what Bo said, and we said it before as well. Where does it go? Jerry Jones is not going to not be the owner of the Cowboys. Jerry Jones, we none of us think is going to win this battle of, sternly written letters to one another. And Roger Goodell is going to be the commissioner. And then what's the relationship going to be like going forward?
It's endlessly fascinating. We got Mark Cuban still to come a little bit later on this program, and much more as we roll on a Tuesday. But right now, a word from Dollar Shave Club. So you've heard us talking